growing up, I was basically gaslighted. I mean, every time I'd say something that I knew was true, Melissa, I knew it was true. And then it was always like, no, you're wrong. No, that's not true. The physical bodies in this earthly world have been very manipulated. Negative aliens have manipulated the DNA, so a lot of them are animal-eating ancestors. I saw at the age of 13 a picture of what happens to veal. They call it a veal, but it's a little baby. And after that, I was like, no way, never again. That's tools of the dark, of the old program, of the old agenda. Two overlapping potentials here. Are you going to choose a path of the light, or are you on a path of the dark? You don't have to get sick. You don't have to fear. Once you start clearing your energy field, you are free of debris. We have barely scratched the surface of what's possible for us as a human species.
If you could give one message to humanity about the path that we're on, what would it be? I am here today with Lora Spagna, who is an author, spiritual catalyst, mentor, guide, intuitive, animal communicator, healer, multi-dimensional channel, light worker, visionary, and luminary. She has had some profound spiritual experiences that we are going to learn about today. Lora, thank you for joining me.
Melissa, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
I would love to start by learning a little bit about you and your backgrounds. Were you always spiritual? Were you raised religious or spiritual, or how did you get started on this path?
Yeah, I definitely wasn't raised religious or spiritual. In fact, my family refers to it as, woo-woo crap. What happened was, out of college, I went into corporate America because that's all I knew. They didn't have I don't even know if there was things like Enneagram then. I didn't know about astrology or any of that stuff. I was miserable right from the get-go. I remember the first week thinking this cannot be what my life is. And I spent almost about 20 years in corporate America. I call it the hamster wheel of life, the slave driver pattern or program. And I was so unhappy that in those 20 years, I developed all kinds of unhealthy behavioral patterns. Excessive smoking, drinking, eating, spending, sexing, couldn't get to sleep, couldn't wake up. Thyroid was completely off. I was on all kinds of pharmaceutical drugs from well-meaning doctors. Hair was falling out. Just you name it, it was a problem. My brother died of a drug overdose in that time. There was addiction and, just neglect and basically, we loved each other, but we weren't functioning well. So when he died, I started getting messages from him, and I really didn't know that I could do that. So it took about a year, the first year that was happening, where I was just in a lot of skepticism and doubt. And, I was going through the process of unpacking that. And at the same time, I was starting to get messages sort of from loved ones who crossed over, or not long after that. And so I was giving messages to relatives who were open-minded to it, and there was validation coming in. So what happened was my brother's message was if you think you're not on the same path as me, you need to take a look. You need to change your ways. He also was sort of stuck in what we call the astral realms. So he needed help because he essentially committed suicide in a sense through drugs, right? So in any case, I ended up quitting my job because my lifelong dream was to, help animals on a global scale. That was my mantra. That was what I wanted to do. I became a dog trainer. Right away, I started getting messages from the dogs. I could hear them. That's where it all started. In that first year, that's where it started. But then what happened was my husband divorced me because I started saying, I'm going to go off these pharmaceutical drugs. I'm going to quit this smoking. I'm going to quit all these drugs. I'm going to change. I'm getting messages. He just wasn't into it. And so I moved to Maui. I started working with dogs there, and I started getting really clear messages. We're here to help the humans. If you want to help us, you got to help the humans. I get into all the healing arts there. That's where the radical change started to happen. I was starting to learn how to work with energy and how to utilize energy I had what's called a near-death experience, but not in a traditional hospital setting. It's called a little death. It's where the consciousness basically leaves the body at will, in a sense. So I was working with energy enough that I could leave my body, but not like an astral plane travel. It was literally the dissolution of the physical known world. And then with that, right after that, I had what's called the first contact, right? ET, first contact. So that's where everything changed. That was over 20 years ago. Since then, it's been a lifetime of unpacking and what I call cleaning up the shadow and working with the aspects of the multidimensional field of consciousness. I know we'll talk about that, to clean up all of the, what I call energetic debris that kind of keeps us sort of stuck or trapped in what's often referred to as the ego, which I don't even buy into that storyline. It's clearing out all of what I call the density that keeps us in the physical world. But I'm still in the physical world. It's just about clearing out the density that keeps us stuck or trapped in various degrees of pain, suffering, lack, limitation, etc. So that's what I've been doing since then. Within less than 2 years of what I call coming into more right alignment, which was leaving corporate America and really starting on what I now know was my soul's true divine agenda and reason for being here. Within 2 years, all of the pharmaceutical drugs were gone, all the smoking, all the drugs, all the alcohol. I healed my thyroid, my hair grew back, I dropped all the weight, 6 figures in credit card debt was gone within 2 years. And all of the obsessive, addictive patterns and behaviors, they really left my life. Because I think that that's what happens as we come into alignment. I think that's the real message here, is that as we come into alignment with our true reason for being here as souls who are progressing, those things that were causing all the friction in our life, they start to drop away really organically. And those are the things that are causing and contributing to our suffering, right?
Wow, what a transformation, Lori. And for those watching, we will get to your spiritual experiences, but I just have to go back to your work with animals because, as I was telling you, I'm also an animal lover. And so I just love this subject. So you started getting messages from the dogs that you were working with, and they told you that they were here to help humans. And
Yeah.
so what role do animals play?
Well, animals as a collective have an agenda, right? We could call it a divine mission of animals or the divine agenda, the soul's agenda. But really what they're here is, I would say, 4 things overall, based on what I've learned from them. Number 1, they're here to anchor in certain energetic frequencies, which we could call core virtues. They're templates, ways of operating. So, for example, magnanimity is a great example. Magnanimity, the ability to love the seemingly unlovable. Equanimity, like we're all equal even though we're different. They have that awareness. Like a wolf pack totally gets that. Humans have it a little misunderstood when they think of the alpha as being superior. That's just a human perspective. The alpha understands how to utilize the alpha brainwave, the beta brainwave, and understands that everyone in the pack and is equally important. So every role matters. So anyway, that's part of their mission and purpose, is to anchor in certain virtues, right? Then they're also here to be mirrors and reflectors to their humans if they live with humans. So they're always reflecting something that's rightly aligned or something that's meant to be learned or something that's meant to be healed or resolved. They're mirrors. And they're teachers. Like that's another role that they play. So they're teaching appropriate behaviors that are more aligned, or they're teaching something about behavioral patterns if they live with a human. If they don't live with a human, they may be teaching something else, like, elephants are teaching, for example, true history, and there's all kinds of things they're teaching. So those are the roles, the key roles. And when I say they're anchoring in virtues, also some of that is just vibrational resonance. Like they're able to hold certain vibrations in their energetic space that allows and creates space for others to elevate right? And we're learning to do that. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yes. Two things. First of all, it's so interesting that you mentioned a pack of wolves because just yesterday I was talking to someone who remembers a past life as a wolf. Do you like what you're hearing on this podcast? For just $10 a month, you can join Love Car Life Academy, where you'll have access to our exclusive community chat and our weekly live streams where we answer your most pressing questions and deep dive into your spiritual practice. You don't have to be alone on this journey. Come join us. We would love to have you. And she said exactly what you said, that they are developing already self-awareness and like a higher brain function and functioning. Like she said, I felt genuine, true love for my pack and my family, and I knew what my role was, and there was no judgment. We just all worked together and loved each other. And she also said that it's like they were part of one body, like they functioned together so well.
Right. They totally get that oneness. There's so many interesting things because humans have we've been so limited in our perspective because we've only been using primarily a left analytical brain. And we're mostly using in our awake state, mostly just a beta brainwave frequency. And most humans from that perspective, that frequency cannot understand or see or perceive greater perspective. But the wolves are using, all the animals are using much more of a theta brainwave and an alpha brainwave, more frequent than a beta brainwave. They have a wider bandwidth of consciousness than we do, actually. And not only that, they're not as shut down energetically in their multidimensional fields. So their awareness overall is much greater than ours, and their awareness of their awareness. So one of the best examples I can give to you about this is when you, just for a moment, if I mention something like Australia, okay, you know exactly where it is, you know what it is, you have some awareness about who lives there, what the people are like, but you weren't thinking about it. You didn't need to think about it. You just have it. That's kind of so much more of how animals function. They have incredible awareness without having to think about it or analyze it or figure it out or understand it. They just have knowing. Yeah. And when I do readings for like people and their animals, the animals, I always say, they know your secrets. And what I mean by that is they are so aware of what the human is here for, what the human's working through, what their challenges are, what their struggles are, what their soul's agenda is. Because of course, when you're talking to the soul of an animal, the soul of the animal or the higher self, which aren't exactly the same, but they're obviously we're all connected, everything's connected. That aspect of the animal can access levels of consciousness for their human in service to their human beyond the human's personal identity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
So they just have so much to offer us once we start to recognize everything. And it's just, there's consciousness in everyone everywhere. So for me, I can communicate with individual animals or collectives of animals. Like we can talk to the whole collective of all the bees, or we can talk to the whole collective of any subgroup of animals, or we can talk to all animals together as a collective, because that collective consciousness exists at a frequency of consciousness where consciousness is always eternally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Even I wanted to go back to your point about how they anchor in energy. Probably any person who has pets can attest that they bring like this calming, like uplifting, expanding energy into your home. It's almost like being around them can start the spiritual expansion process if you're paying attention.
Yes. Well, that was where it happened for me, was like I wanted to be of service to animals on a global scale. I really wanted to help them. And it was the animals who became my teachers. I thought, I'm going to help animals because they need my help, because they're the ones who need our help. But really, from their perspective, it was like, okay, well, if you want to help us, you're going to need to up level to our level of consciousness so that you can help us in our mission and purpose.
Right.
Because that's how you're going to help us. The animals say this when I'm channeling. They're always saying, like, please don't get into our pain and suffering with us. Please don't promote our pain. Please don't share all the horrible things done to animals. Instead, share solutions, share the good news stories. Things are changing. Share what we want people to become more conscious of. They don't want us to go into the drudgery with them. They want us to see new perspectives of how we really truly can serve and elevate. And so they're always saying, like, share solutions, share, on a most mundane level, grass-fed beef is better than caged, that kind of thing. Even on that most mundane level, that's an example of how they would say, share what's good. And they even have said, like, don't, if you're talking about donating or doing charities, like in my own personal guidance, they've said to me, donate to the charities that show how they're helping and serving, not to the charities that focus on the pain and the suffering, because you're feeding the energy of pain and suffering rather than feeding more of what you want, right?
I'm really glad you brought that up because it can be a bit of a hot topic with people. And so I'm always a bit hesitant to bring it up if I don't know where someone stands. But that's something I'm also very passionate about personally, is how we treat the animals. So, I mean, personally, I've been guided in my life, and a lot of this has been for health reasons, to completely stop eating meat. I know that's not the answer for everybody, but I think we can all agree that the way animals are treated in the system that we have is not good. But I've also noticed that the people who are making the biggest difference are the ones who are coming to it with compassion and, like you said, offering solutions, just showing a better way of life rather than coming into it with an energy of like fighting against what we don't want, because that only strengthens it.
That's right. That's exactly right. And really the truth is, like you said, and I think we might get into this later, but the physical bodies in this earthly world have been very manipulated. The DNA has been manipulated. And a lot of what we could call negative aliens, if you're willing to go down that road, have kind of manipulated the DNA. So a lot of them are animal eating ancestors. And if the DNA is wired for that or programmed for that, a person does need that until they start to work with their own DNA, which can be repatterned and reprogrammed to not require that. So I completely understand that. I saw at the age of 13 a picture of like a veal, veal, what happens to veal, what that is, and how they call it a veal, but it's a little baby. And after that, I was like, no way, never again. But people do have to find their own right way. And part of making change is not trying to push, force, coerce, manipulate. That's tools of the dark, of the old program, of the old agenda, and really helping people to find their own natural right way through love, compassion, care, heart-centered opening, right? Just like you said, Melissa.
Right. There's so many directions that we could go. I'd love to talk to you about the changing the DNA, but maybe let's start with your spiritual experience, since we promised the viewers we would go into that. And I would also love to hear the details of that.
Yeah. Well, since my brother was really the catalyst for me, that became my earliest sort of wake-up call. And I was just trying to find out, like, is this real? Am I really getting messages from my brother? I started teaching myself, without even knowing it, how to develop my psychic gifts, all of my extrasensory gifts. I was growing the third eye and decalcifying the third eye, which is just the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. I was starting to utilize my theta brainwave without realizing it. Over the years of doing it and practicing, it just started to develop. So what happens is the truth is we all have these gifts within us. There's no one who doesn't. It's just that we don't all necessarily have that calling or that unique soul path or agenda. So what was happening was I was really at first just trying to determine if what I was getting was real, and I just wanted truth. And that was part of the journey too, because I was actually in so much emotional pain growing up from really being neglected. And it's not that my parents weren't loving or caring. It was that they grew up, as wounded children and not in a society that like they grew up in the Leave It to Beaver, smile and everything's fine. Right. So they didn't know how to process that stuff. They didn't have any of those tools. In a sense, my soul's agenda was to heal the traumas and wounds of the ancestral lineage and to learn how to do that through the DNA. So in trying to heal my own wounds, that took a lifetime of not being good enough, not mattering, not being worthy, not being heard, not being listened to, not being cared for. Do I have worth? Do I have value? Is this woo-woo shit? Like, I hope it's okay that I say that, but that's what we might need to do a bleep there, but that's what they used to say. Like, I'm not interested in that woo-woo, stuff. Right. So all of that sent the message, like, you have no value, you have no worth, you don't matter, what you're teaching doesn't matter, I'm not interested. That was 20 years of healing there. So all of the work that I was doing as a healer wasn't because I had physical issues. The thyroid was healed right away. It was coming from the deep need to help animals, the deep need to heal my own core wounds, the soul agenda to heal the lineage, which I didn't even know that's what I was doing. And then the higher part of me that was always seeking truth. Because again, like in my growing up, I was basically gaslighted. I mean, every time I'd say something that I knew was true, Melissa, I knew it was true. And then it was always like, no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. No, that's not true. So like, it just creates such a schism. And I think that's the way our old paradigm has functioned. That old 3D paradigm is like this Leave It to Beaver paradigm, smile, don't speak the truth, just be happy. Even that whole law of attraction movement is really reeked with a lot of this spiritual bypassing or carpet sweeping. Be positive and deny what's really underneath there just so you can attract something. Like that doesn't work. That doesn't work. It'll only get you so far. So that's really what my spiritual journey was. I was working on healing and resolving those parts of me that I knew were in some form of emotional pain or mental pain, and that I had to find the truth because I knew that what I was being told wasn't true, but I was trying to discern. So all of that really was just the journey, right? And here's the last piece I'll say on that is that when I was always like a self-help junkie, Melissa, and I was just like trying to become a better version of me. And even when I moved to Maui, I was just in search of love, like not romantic love. I was trying to understand what is love. Because people would say God is love. And I'd be like, okay, well, what people go through, like if God is love, then what's going on in the world here? So I was both on a quest for truth and a quest to know love and to become love. I knew I wanted to be love. And not like romantic love, like I said. So that was the journey, like as a self-help, junkie, self-improvement junkie, it put me on a path of spiritual alignment. That wasn't the original agenda for me. It wasn't like I thought that was where I was going to end up. I teach a self-love program. All personal development, all self-growth, if you stay the course, will put you on a path of union with the divine. Inevitably, it will.
I love that. That's so comforting.
Yeah, it is. And that's the path that humanity's on right now, right? That's what's going on. We're on basically, two overlapping potentials here. They're overlapping, but they're always like intersecting and dissecting, like separating. Like that's kind of even what the 8 is in a way, which we're in a year 8. But it's like, are you going to choose a path of the light, which is a path of expansion, elevation, upliftment, evolution? It is a path of love, but it's got all kinds of other potentials in there too that will allow for more expansion and evolution. Or are you on a path of contraction, constriction, which is a path of the dark? That's a path of control, domination, manipulation, secrecy, coercion, lies, deceit, force, control, right? I said that. So right now we're having opportunity on earth to witness that and to choose. And we choose, this is like through the channeling that I do. What comes through always is it's always free will choice. What will we choose? Will we choose a path of the light? Will we choose a path of the dark? And that choice, we make it every moment, every day with our actions, our words, our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions, the energy, how we perceive, what we choose to perceive or not perceive, what we engage with, what we choose to engage with or not. We're choosing consciously and unconsciously, constantly. Yeah.
Beautiful. Could you share with us about when you joined this group where you were learning how to work with energy?
Yeah. Well, I was living in Maui, and it was the same kind of thing. I was just in a lot of pain, right? So I found this energy worker group. And what we would do every week was we were working with how do you use energy and how do you utilize energy to do anything? Because here's the truth. Everything is energy in this reality. Thoughts are energy, emotions are energy, everything's energy. So I was learning in the very earliest phases how to use energy for healing because I was interested in healing animals. And the animals were like, well, you're going to have to heal my human if you're going to heal. But I went there every Thursday night. We would play with energy. We would play with like creating energy balls. I teach this in my classes. We'd play with throwing energy at each other, catching energy, moving energy through the body. We were playing with energy to, yes, heal our body. I restored my eyesight to 20/20. I remember when I moved to Maui, I had these really thick glasses and I couldn't drive without them. And I remember when I started realizing like I see better without the glasses. And I wasn't even really trying that hard. I was just using energy and putting it like over my eyes. Like I was just building energy balls, using it. And then I would use it. I would notice every time I would use it on my animals were able to do these incredible things like my animal companions. They could jump like 6-foot walls. I was like, how is she doing that? And it took a long time to learn. Then I would use it for helping my clients and, people that I was working with and their animals, and they were experiencing miraculous energy bursts. Then I was also learning how to use energy to reprogram. And in this case, I don't totally like the word program, but reprogram the mind, because everything that people call the ego is just energy.
Oh, yes.
All the beliefs, the belief systems, the identifications, the egoic structure, everything that old school teachers are teaching is completely, I'm sorry, not like wrong, but it's just not new paradigm alignment truth. It's energy. It can be cleared out. It can be cleared out of the field. I was just learning, if I put energy here, what will I do? If I move energy there, what will happen to it? We were learning how to literally affect people, places, things outside of us with energy. In some of the classes we were doing, we were learning how to lift ourselves and move ourselves, project ourselves across the room, which is another kind of like, it's a projection. You could call it flying, but it's not really flying, right? Movement of self, of bodies and stuff. So I did that for 2 years while I was going there. And that was where the near-death experiences were happening, because the teacher of the class was always teaching us, don't go to sleep overnight, meditate through the night. And he would teach us very specific practices for how to meditate through the night. So without going to sleep. So I was doing that regularly and consistently. And I would do it I lived in Pukalani on a golf course, and I would meditate on the golf course all night and, stay awake. I was awake. I was completely awake. That's where the first contact happened, which we can talk about if that feels relevant. But all of that work, and I would meditate through the night, and I would be able to still my body to such a degree that I was starting to have, those are OBEs, right? That's the astral plane. You can travel through the astral plane. You can have outer body experiences, because once you have control over, and control's not even a right word, but the ability to still entirely all levels and layers of your being and retain full consciousness, awake and aware, you can travel to non-physical places and, have outer body types of experiences and explore the realms of the infinite, right? So those were the things I was learning in there. Does that make sense?
So
Yeah.
I don't know if this is something that you can explain if it took a long time to learn, but how do you create an energy ball?
Oh my God, I can teach you right now. Well, I don't know if I can teach you in 2 minutes on a podcast, but it's a 5-minute practice. I teach it in all the classes. But even right now, if you just take your hand, either hand, really, it's better maybe if you start with your dominant hand and just place it upward and just allow your hand to sort of soften like you're almost holding a tennis ball. Can you sort of feel and just bounce it a little bit? So that's how it starts. Then you just start building it, playing with it. And here's the thing too. One of the things I teach in all my classes is my Sacred Visionary Mentorship is how to utilize energy to open up the portal within the Sacred Heart Center, right? Because all the chakra centers are blocked in humans. This is why they're having all kinds of distortion, right? And when you know how to use energy, you can open up all the centers. The most significant to open is the Sacred Heart Center. They're all equally important.
Right.
But the most significant, that heart center is a portal that allows you to connect with other dimensional realities. I mean, some people might say, why is that important? Well, the reason it's important is because once you start clearing your energy field, you are free of debris. What does that mean? You're no longer subject to the rules of the third dimensional paradigm in the same way. You don't have to get sick. You don't have to fear. You don't have to believe that belief system. It's a false belief system that we never know when death is going to come. No, you start knowing your plan. You are creator in a conscious way of your life path and your life plan. You start having so much more innate ability to drive your own car, the vehicle that you live in, meaning the physical body, with like the pristine kind of gas that you want. You know where you're going. You no longer have that uncertainty. You don't have to drive with fear anymore. There's no more fear, worry, doubt. Okay, you have moments of frustration or challenge. Something's asking you to grow or evolve, but you're not lacking the clarity. You have divine certainty in all things. And even when there's moments when you don't necessarily have that certainty, gaining that certainty or getting that certainty becomes so effortless. It's as little or as easy as asking a little question, a right question. You start knowing your divine team. One of the things I teach in my classes and on my retreats is this practice that I teach called Who Stands With Me? And so you can start learning who your team is, your team in the non-physical, your guides, your masters, your teachers, your loved ones, the beings who are here to help you. You can also get rid of team members who you've outgrown. I have had to do that. Okay, whoever's been on my team that allowed that experience, we're not having that again. Like, if that's okay to you, I'm going to need to ask you to leave, right? So you start having these abilities and talents. You start knowing who's your team, who are you working with, what are they here to help you with? You start having like ability to connect telepathically with all kinds of beings. Our gifts, talents, and abilities we have barely scratched the surface of what's possible for us as humans and as a human species. So I'm just I hope I'm making it clear that, these talents and abilities are available to us to improve the quality of our lives in every area of life. Health, relationship, money, wealth, career, success, service, contribution, etc. And as we start to develop these tools, these gifts, these talents, these abilities from within, life will improve not only for ourselves, but for the whole of humanity.
Thank you for sharing, Lori. I would love to hear about your near-death experience.
Yeah. Okay. So the near-death experience, there were multiple ones, but the one that was the biggest one was the first one, because understand, I was meditating through the night and I was having these experiences where I knew I was leaving my body, but the moment I would start to leave my body, this fear, like automatic fear would kick in, because you suddenly have the awareness, I'm dying. And the moment you have the awareness, the thought or the emotion of it, like that stops it, right? Because now you're in your body. So I hadn't reached a level of mastery on my own, but what ended up happening was my dog, whose name was Kenya, she died while I was in Maui. And it was like, she was my love, right? She was my first dog that was mine and, my child and my dogster, I used to call her. And on the week that she died, I was just so broken. I was broken. I was so brokenhearted. And just, anyway, I was going to go to my Thursday night class no matter what, because I knew, that it would help me. And I'm in the car driving from Pukalani to Haiku, where the class was in Maui. And in the car, I hear my dog come in clear. And she's like, Lora, mommy, she called me mommy, go to class, have fun. I want you to be happy. I'll connect with you there. And I'm like bawling, as I'm driving, but I get to the class and I go to the teacher and I'm like, please, can you help me to know where she is? Please, can you help me? So he just put me in the middle of the room, right? There was like a circle of people around me. And we were always meeting in a circle. There was, different people would come and go, but it was always at least like 10 or 15 somewhere around people. So I go in the middle of the room. I don't know what he's going to do. I just know I trusted him. I've been working with him, and he basically took energy. Now, in retrospect, what I know that he did was he was able to use energy to activate the DMT in the brain. So for anyone who understands DMT, which I think is dimethyltryptyl, I don't know the long word for it, but it's in the brain. And when a person or animal dies, the DMT gets released. And when that DMT gets, in fact, that's the whole story behind grave robbers, right? And tomb robbers, is they want the DMT in the brain, a lot of them from the past, because the DMT will allow you to have all kinds of like out-of-body experiences. So he released the DMT enough that for me, I was, as far as I knew, I was dead. Everything in the physical world was gone. And yet I was completely aware of myself. I was completely aware of all voices were my voice, and yet they weren't. All sounds were the sound of me, and yet they weren't. Like there was differentiation. I still knew as an individuated being, but I was in oneness with everything and everyone. And from that space of like, I could just have an awareness, and that awareness brought something to me. But of course, needless to say, my dog came to me, Kenya, and she was just saying, Mommy, I'm okay. I'm with you. I'm okay. And she was just telling me how much she loved me and she wanted me to be happy. And she just wanted me to go on. It still makes me sad in a way. But from that place, there was just, all I can say is that energy was so full of love and beyond love, beyond human love, that my experience there, and I had other relatives meet me too, relatives who had crossed over, transitioned, and there were certain beings saying, okay, you're going to need to go back. And I'd be like, no, I don't want to. It's all is well. All will be well. And they would say, but your other dogs are at home. They need food. And I'd be like, they'll be okay. All is well. Like that's all it's just so euphorically blissful. And you are meeting with other beings and there are other consciousnesses there. Like I was still identifying as myself and they were still there too. And yet we were in this state of complete euphoria. Well, anyway, at a certain point, I had the awareness that my teacher, he said like, it's enough now, it's time. And he counted to 3, snapped his fingers. I just popped back into the body. It was like he had control of my energy in a sense, I guess. I never really was able to ask him exactly what he did because when I came back into the body, I'm in the middle of the room and everybody in the circle took their 1 or 2 fingers. All they had to do was just touch me. And then for another, at least half an hour, we were all in fetal positions, hysterical laughter. Why did all they have to do was touch me? Because there was so much energy now vibrating through me, that bliss energy. It's like a bliss state. And everybody just starts hysterical laughing in fetal positions for the longest time. Now, I hadn't laughed like that in the longest time because those 2 years in Maui were so extraordinarily painful. So I just remember that night total euphoria because of that energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So it's fascinating to me the fact that he was able to just put you into that state. Now, you mentioned, I think it was in your bio, that he had been studying with Himalayan Masters, so he was probably quite advanced.
He has some stories about waking up in a morgue, banging on the refrigerator. Like, he has a documented story about that. I was learning from the non-physical because I was doing so much practice on my own. Like, I was doing so much meditative practice. I had this, in fact, let me tell you this. I've shared this very rarely, but it's such an amazing thing that happened, was that one of those Thursday nights, I came home, I drove up to my house, I put the car in park, and I had my eyes were wide open. I was completely alert. I had just driven home. I'm sitting in the driveway, and there's these like huge, like rainbow butterfly like wings out of both of my eyes. And when I say huge, it was like taller than taller than 7 feet, or, the tallest human being you can imagine, out of both sides of my eyes. And I'm looking like this, like, oh my God, this is so amazing. It's like so beyond you can't even handle it. I literally had to say, you have to stop. I can't handle this. You have to stop. But it was angels, like angelic beings, showing me who they were and revealing their light to me, because my energy had been gotten to the point that I was like pure enough, in a pure enough state, that I was able to, this is the saying, pierce the veils, right? I was able to see through, perceive through and beyond the physical world. So I was working with these beings and they were teaching me. I had one day I was meditating in the room and I opened my eyes, but with my eyes open, I could see this apparition, like it was Jesus, like opening his arm, waving, and there was like a portal there. And he was just saying, come through, like, and I'm like, okay, there's a wall there. I can't go through. But he was letting me know, like, you're coming through. This is like new dimensions of opening. And you got to say, like, when I was living in Maui, I was alone for 2 years. My parents were calling, like asking me to go to doctors, right? This is why a lot of times, if a soul has a very progressive agenda, they might go, like, so-called go to the mountain, right? Go be alone, because people think they're crazy. Now I can communicate it after all these years in clear, concise terms. But back then, most of that stuff I couldn't really share with anybody. I was learning on my own. I was working with masters. I was asking them, teach me, tell me, show me. What does this mean? What is that? Like, I was learning on my own for the most part. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. So with the time that we have left, do you have time to share about your first contact experience?
Yeah, it's not that long. It was one of the nights I was meditating in Pukalani on the golf course. And there was a certain point I opened my eyes, but it was like 2:00 in the morning. I remember that vividly because I opened my eyes and I saw a very low light doing circular. It looked like a star, but I could also see it was doing circular movements. I could also see, like, with, when you let your eyes sort of gaze a little bit, I could see the rainbow sort of lights coming from it. And I just was so telepathic at that time already. I didn't really realize. A lot of times we don't always realize, right? So I just had this thought, like, oh, if I can do anything to help, let me know. Because I knew it wasn't a plane because it was moving the circular movement. And because it was 2 a.m. and at that time, back then, the airport was closed. There was no ships. There was nothing but a ship. It wasn't, I had even worked in the cable industry. I knew it wasn't a satellite. So with that thought, the next thing, I was on that ship. That's all I know. It wasn't like a ship came down and, I walked in my physical form. Like, to me, those are abduction experiences. And someone can correct me if they've had a different, but when you're really in the physical world, those kinds of abduction experiences where it's very physical are what I would refer to as negative aliens, or aliens who are not in every case, but they're there to sort of benefit and prosper off of the human somehow, learn, study, whatever they're there to do, use their DNA, collect DNA, et cetera. But this was teletransport. So I was on that ship. I was in there. It was a very etheric, non-physical. It was not carbon-based like our physical bodies. It was like light-based, but like almost like oily or etheric is what I call it. I had the ability to move around that ship. I recognized and yet didn't recognize them. I knew them yet didn't know them. There was a room where there was like someone who I would now identify as Palladian. There were cameras everywhere. He was in there. It was what I would call male Palladian. There was a hallway. I was able to move down the hallway. The doors would open when I stood in front of them, kind of like, Star Trek. You stand there, they'd slide open. I went into this long kind of corridor, and then there was what looked like a stadium. It was a woman I met there. I knew her, but didn't know her. And I asked her, what is this? She said, that's where we keep our children. She said, do you want to come in there? I was like, no, I don't. She was like, that's good. I said, I want to go home. She asked if she could put a chip in me, or she didn't call it a chip. She said, can I put this in you so we can stay in touch? She used something, put that. I remember that so clearly. I'll tell you more. But I remember saying after that, I want to go home. She said, fine, no problem. Go home. A door opened. The next thing I knew, I was right there on where I started, in my house, on my deck. So it was so weird, Melissa. The next day, I went to bed. I was like in a daze, in shock. I didn't understand or know. But first of all, the next day, I was so angry, actually, because I could feel that thing in my arm. I could feel it. And I was angry, like, what the heck happened? For at least, it's hard to remember the amount of time, but a long time after that, I was getting what I now call downloads, visions, numbers, signs, signals, telepathically in my brain. I did not understand what they were. And they were like moving through my body. And I would ask, what is this? What is this? And I was frustrated, because I couldn't make sense of any of it, but I would always hear and be told, you'll know when the time comes. You'll know when the time comes. And I would get angry. I'd be like, what the heck is that? That's supposed to appease me? But now I know what it was. That was all the codes, the coding to help people wake up. It was the gifts that I needed. It was the my DNA being repaired. It was the codes in my own DNA to help awaken others, to activate other people's DNA and animals too, to have tools of consciousness. It was synchronizing and organizing and awakening lessons that I had learned and mastered in other lifetimes, parallel realities, which I do that with my people now. I help them to reclaim their gifts from other lifetimes, because we've all had other lifetimes where we've achieved mastery in some area or another. We don't know how to sync and actualize into this physical world, anchor it into our physical body and being. Those are our so-called dharma, right? That's like the stuff we get to claim, and we can pass that down through the generations too. All that stuff started to come into the knowing through those downloads that I was getting. So now I understand, but then I didn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what was that chip that they put in your arm? Do you know?
It was an etheric chip. Listen, it took me years to unpack that. And I'll never forget this one reading. I did a lot of regressions. I did this one reading with a woman who specialized in talking to extraterrestrials. Now it's really easy for me. I can channel them. I can access them. They call themselves star family races. I consider myself to be what you call a braided starseed. So a braided starseed, by my definition and how I've unpacked it and understood it, is someone who, same soul, not a different soul, same soul who went through the whole of my life experience, met up in a non-physical, non-time-space reality, in time and space, reunited, reconnected with like a future in terms of linear time version of me that had already achieved other levels of mastery and braided in. And that's like a star family version of me. That what I really remember from that ship when she said, "Oh, good." I remember on the ship being like, "Why was that weird? Why that was so weird? Why is it good that I don't want to go in there?" Because I was in there. I was one of the star children on that ship in another time-space reality, future version of me braiding into same soul who traversed time, space, dimensions, right? Because we're all multidimensional beings. So that part of me braided into this physical world to bring forward service and contribution to help support and assist humanity and really in this evolutionary journey. So now it makes sense, right? But years of unpacking. Anyway, one of these women I did a reading with who was, that was her specialty, communicating with other extraterrestrial races. At that time, I didn't feel like I knew how to do it as well as I do now. And she was like, "Well, they're all apologizing to you. That ship was designed to be of service to you. It was designed to help you to stay in touch with them so you could communicate with them better. That ship was not meant to be a hindrance to you ever. And it served its purpose." I had it removed a lot of times in a lot of different ways. Etherically, I have no resonance with it anymore, but it bothered me for so long. And I finally made peace with it in that reading that I got. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Lori, do you have time for one more question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I know we're going a little over here, but there's just so much to dive into with your journey. If you could give one message to humanity about the path that we're on and what's most important for us to be doing right now, what would it be?
Choose the high road. Choose truth. I could bring through a message from my team if you want. Do you want to hear a little?
I would love that. Yes.
So, okay, let me just do a slight introduction. I'm pausing them for a moment. So the team that I bring forward identifies as the collective. Sometimes when they are star beings specifically, they might refer to themselves as the fleet or a sub-collective of the collective. And the collective involves many beings from many frequencies that come together as a collective. They might be angels and archangels come to the group. They might be animals. They might be planetary bodies, ascended masters. I usually work through the lineage of Sananda and the hosts, which is the same lineage of Jesus, and all the divine goddesses, Mary Magdalene, etc. Also work with Melchizedek and the Melchizedek order, which is part of that lineage as well. Lots and lots of beings. So just know that this collective, they don't necessarily need to identify as individuals, but they're just letting you know they're in those groups. So blessings. And we are greatly appreciative of this moment to share, of this moment here now, where we are able to offer you insight and awareness regarding your question, beloved, regarding the trajectory for humanity and how to advise humans at this time. And the words that were utilized just prior to our coming forth. Indeed, choose the high road. This might be perceived to be small or minor. And yet what we would offer you here is the magnitude of this message. Choosing the high road with all your endeavors, with everything you do and think and say, with all choices, will always put you in alignment with a path that is for your most benevolent best. Now, you may also use those words if you choose. Continue to affirm this is your choice, to choose that which is for your most benevolent best with harm to none. Harm to no one, ideally, you see? For if you are choosing this path always, continuously, you will find yourself always on a path of growth and evolution. And if that is what you are choosing, your will be aligned with the will of God, your source, your creator, the infinite, the all that is. And if you are choosing to align your choice with the will of the infinite, the all that is, then you will always be in right space, right time, right alignment, even when there are times where you may feel that or perceive that you are not in right space. If you continuously choose the high road, the path of alignment with your source, the path that is for your most benevolent best. And even when you do not know what that is per se, in any moment, your perspective may not be fully clear on what that is. As you choose it, as you will it, it shall be. And as you choose and will that which is for your most benevolent best, and always ideally with harm to none, you will find that that is the path that you will be on, where you are continuously growing and evolving and expanding, where your gifts are coming online, which have been spoken about earlier today, and where you are healing and resolving issues that have in the past caused you dismay, discomfort, dislike, etc. Choosing the high road, choosing the path of the most benevolent best is not always the easiest path. There will be times you will want to indulge in some form of pain or suffering, some form of victimhood, some form of wrongness, perceiving wrongness, some form of giving your power away, some form of a lower perspective, some form of density, some form of struggle. You see, that is an easier path oftentimes. Choosing the high road is not always the easiest path, but it is the best path, we would say. And we use the word best relative to your human perspective. It is the best path, for it is a path that will continue to allow you to continue on your soul's evolutionary journey. And that is why you are all here. You are here at this time because you are choosing this, because it is what you desire as a collective. Many humans are being dissuaded, being confused, coerced, and manipulated. This has been discussed earlier. So choose to continue to affirm, if this is indeed your choice. We are not attempting to sway you or persuade you. We are simply attempting to answer the question that was posed. We hope this has been helpful. It is our great pleasure to come forward at this time and to share with you. We say thanks. We let it be.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm so glad we had a chance to do that.
Yeah, well,
They always leave me with so much bliss. So my eyes get really teeny, my mouth gets real, because I'm just very happy, because there's always so much joy that is their frequency. And it's a kind of joy that's almost makes me want to laugh and be just, that's what it feels like.
Well, Lori, thank you so much for having this conversation and sharing from your personal journey. Would you like to tell the viewers where they can find you and anything you have going on?
Yeah, I would love that. Well, my website is lorispagna.com. It's LORISPAGNA. For anyone who wants to know more about helping animals on a global scale and developing your telepathic abilities with animals and communicating with them, you can get some amazing gifts at class and other gifts at lorispagna.com/free gifts/animals. If you want to activate your DNA and learn more about that, we do regular DNA activations, learn all about awakening your gifts from within your own DNA. You can go to lorispagna.com/free gifts/DNA. If you want to learn how to connect with your star family races, you can learn all about that at lorispagna.com/free gifts/starseed. You can find me as well I have a podcast called The Awakened Elevated Human, which is relatively new.
Okay.
And I teach about all these things on that podcast. It's one of the ways I get to be of service. So you can check that out as well. It's all at my website at lorispagna.com.
Wonderful. I'll have those links in the show notes so people can check those out. Thank you so much, Lori.
Melissa, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
Likewise. Thank you for watching and listening. Your views, likes, comments, and shares truly make the biggest difference in supporting this channel. Don't forget to check the show notes for all the links to today's guest, as well as my links. You'll find me on social media at Love Covered Life, my website, lovecoveredlife.com, and the Be a Guest link for anybody who would like to be a guest on the channel. I have great news. Love Covered Life podcast is coming available on audio podcast. You can find it wherever you listen to your audio podcasts.